Hey there guys, this is Cole. Welcome back to another movie review. Today's movie I'm going to be reviewing is the 1987 classic gangster movie, The Untouchables, directed by Brian De Palma. So, what is the plot to this movie? Well, the plot of this movie is as follows. Special Agent Elliot Ness, played by Kevin Costner, must take down legendary crime boss Al Capone, played by Robert De Niro. So that's basically the plot synopsis to this movie, and this is a movie that was on my radar for a while. I was definitely interested in checking it out because Brian De Palma is a movie director who I rather like. He directed the original Carrie movie from 1976, which is a great Stephen King movie adaptation. Not the 2013 remake. That movie was garbage. He also directed Scarface from 1983, which that's another classic, iconic gangster movie. And then, of course, after this movie, after Scarface and this movie, he would go on to do another movie with Al Pacino. Now, granted, Al Pacino's not in this movie, but Al Pacino's in Scarface. And then that director would go, Brian De Palma, he would go to direct Carlito's Way from 1993, starring Al Pacino, which is another fantastic movie. And then, of course, Brian De Palma, he did not direct any of the sequels, but he directed the first Mission Impossible movie. But just Brian De Palma, even though I have not seen many of his movies, in fact, I've only seen about 6 of them, and I think this guy has like 27 movies, if I'm not mistaken, so there's a lot I haven't seen, but the little bit I have seen, he's a phenomenal director, and I gotta be honest, now granted, I know I've only seen this movie once, but this honestly might be my favorite Brian De Palma movie, even over Scarface and Carlito's Way. Like, I really liked this movie. And, of course, when this movie came out in 1987, it was a big hit at the box office, making $106 million worldwide on a $25 million budget, and the movie received positive reviews from critics and audiences, and it was a big hit, and it's a well-known, popular movie even to this day. And, I think I first heard about this movie, like, I'd like to say 4 years ago, but I didn't get around to watching it until tonight because my mom let me rent it on Prime Video, and I'm glad I got the chance to watch this because I really liked it. And I will say, because of how much I liked it, I would like to buy this movie and get it on DVD someday for my collection. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into the review. So the movie starts off where we are introduced to this crime boss by the name of Al Capone, who is played, of course, by Robert De Niro. And Al Capone is, now, for those who don't know who he was essentially this very famous crime boss, gangster, a very well-known, famous one from the 1930s, a real-life gangster who didn't play around, basically. And now, granted, I haven't done, like, a whole lot of research on Al Capone. Like, my only knowledge of Al Capone before this movie is the Tom Hardy biopic movie, which, I saw that movie. That movie was not very good at all. It was a pretty bad movie. And in fact, many people who are interested in Al Capone, and like the biopic movie on Al Capone with Tom Hardy, a lot of people hated that. I saw the movie for myself. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember not really caring for it that much. I don't know. I just didn't really buy Tom Hardy as like this crime boss. But here in this movie, I definitely buy Robert De Niro as this legendary crime boss. Like, I definitely buy Robert De Niro in this role. But anyways, after we're introduced to his character, one of Al Capone's assistants, named Nitty, who is and one of Al Capone's assistants named Nitty, who is this guy who wears all white, he basically brings his suitcase inside of a restaurant, and this girl, sees that the guy left it behind, so she decides to bring the suitcase for him, and then she walks outside, and the suitcase explodes, and, yeah, let's just say she's she's a goner, and keep in mind, like, that is a very intense scene, and this is early on, like, we're not even 7 minutes into the movie, and this has already happened. So that right there goes to show that, yeah, this movie pretty much establishes its tone at the beginning. That, yeah, this movie's definitely not playing around. But then, not long after that, we are introduced to our main character of the movie, Elliot Ness, who is played by Kevin Costner, who I do rather like as an actor, so it's great to see him in this type of movie and what I really like about his character is Elliot Ness, who is played by Kevin Costner. He has a wife and a young daughter. So the fact that he has to protect his family while also trying to take down the legendary crime boss Al Capone, like, that definitely raises this movie's stakes. It definitely raises the stakes and the tension, and I think that's what Brian De Palma is really good at. That's what I think Brian De Palma is really good at when it comes to him being a director. Like, Brian De Palma, like, he definitely knows how to do tension well in, like, thriller movies. I mean, heck. And, crime movies. I mean, heck. The very first Mission Impossible movie is a spy espionage thriller action movie, and that movie does have some rather intense thrilling sequences. So, which, of course, Brian De Palma did after this, but I will review those movies someday down the road, but that's not going to be for a while yet, because there's like 8 of those movies, so it's going to be a while before I cover the Mission Impossible movies, but he only directed the first, not the sequels, but I'm getting off track. But yeah, I really like the main character. I really like this main character, Elliot Ness, played by Kevin Costner. I thought he was likable, and again, Kevin Costner did a great job playing him. And then, of course, 22 minutes into the movie, the main character of the movie, Agent Elliot Ness, is inside of his office, and his mother, and now, remember how I said the little girl grabbed the explosive suitcase? Well, the mother is basically crying to Agent Elliot Ness, reasonably so, at the fact that her daughter died, and she basically says to Agent Elliot Ness, "I can only imagine how tragic this must be for you, because I know that you have a daughter and you would do anything to protect her." And so the mother of this little daughter basically asked Agent Elliot Ness to basically take down these bad guys and give them a taste of their own medicine. And Agent Elliot Ness, of course, wants to take down Al Capone, but he can't do it alone. In fact, early on in the movie, at about the 16-minute mark of the movie, Agent Elliot Ness, he meets this character at nighttime by the name of Jim Malone, who is played by legendary actor Sean Connery, Sean Connery is one of my favorite actors of all time. I miss Sean Connery. Rest in peace, Sean Connery. And he basically plays a cop in this movie Jim Malone, aka Sean Connery's character, and Charles, and, Agent Oscar Wallace, played by Charles Martin Smith, and Agent George Stone, played by Andy Garcia, they all agree, to team up with Elliot Ness, the main character played by Kevin Costner, to take down legendary crime boss Al Capone. But even the main character, Jim Malone, played by Sean Connery, even he's like, I don't know, like, are you really sure you want to take down Al Capone? And of course, Agent Elliot Ness says yes. But by far, my favorite character, now granted, as much as I love the main character of this movie, Elliot Ness, played by Kevin Costner, by far, my favorite character of the movie has got to be Jim Malone, who is played by Sean Connery. And, and I will definitely say, what I really like about Jim Malone is he definitely has a straightforward attitude, but, that's what makes him so great as a character. And Sean Connery, as this character, gives some great one-liners. For example, at the 34-minute mark of the movie, when Jim Malone, Elliot Ness, and and the whole game and the four group of main characters are about to walk outside. The main police officer says to Jim, he says Jimmy, and then Jimmy's like, "What?" And then the police chief says, "What are you dressed for, Halloween?" And then the character Jim Malone, played by Sean Connery, says, "Shut up, I'm working." But like, I thought that scene was funny because the reason I think that scene in particular is funny, the reason I think that's funny is because the way Sean Connery delivered that line, I thought was really funny. Definitely a memorable quote. And then after that, after Sean Connery says, "Shut up, I'm working," and the police chief says, "Where?" And then, "Where? The circus?" And then he just walks away and doesn't answer him. Like, I love that part. I thought that line of dialogue was funny. I also love the part where Jim Malone, played by Sean Connery, breaks into part of a building, to go after some of the gangsters, and one of them says, he's basically yelling, "This is not good." One of the gangsters yells, "This is not good. You got a warrant?" And then I love the part when when Jim Malone, played by Sean Connery, says, "Sure, here's my warrant," and then he just punches the guy in the balls, and then he just falls over. Like, I thought that scene was funny. Very good one-liner and scene. And then as soon as Sean Connery punches the guy in the balls, he says, How do you think he feels now?" like that scene was funny. And then about 39 and a half minutes into the movie, there's the whole scene where the main bad guy of the movie, Al Capone, who is played by Robert De Niro, is basically talking to basically to all of his partners at the dinner table, and he says, "I'm going out," and Al Capone says, "I'm going out there myself. But I get nowhere. Unless the team wins." Sorry about that. Excuse me. And not long after he says that, the main bad guy of the movie, Al Capone, basically takes a bat and he starts beating one of his men, and, on the dinner table in front of everyone, shocking everyone. And, like, that right there, like, that scene right there establishes how dangerous of a threat the main villain of the movie, Al Capone is. Like, and I thought that Robert De Niro gave a great performance as this villain. Like, you definitely bought him as, like, this legendary crime boss. But, of course, the main character of the movie, Elliot Ness, wants his family to be safe, so he has his daughter and his wife go somewhere safe while out of town, while he and his three other mates have to deal with Al Capone and take this crime boss down. And another thing I will say that is great about this movie, this is a crime movie, but when it does come to the action scenes, like the shootout scenes, like, the action sequences in this movie, when they are there, are really good. It's all done practically, it's all believable. And then much later on in the movie, the main character, Elliot Ness, played by Kevin Costner, and Jim Malone, played by Sean Connery, they come to find out that the character with that their partner that has the gray hat and the glasses, Agent Oscar Wallace, he ended up being a victim of the mafia in the elevator, and the whole scene where they discover that is, like, it's a rather tragic scene. It really is. I love the part later on in the movie where an hour and 21 minutes into the movie, when Elliot Ness is somewhere else, and the main where the main character Elliot Ness is somewhere else, and his partner Jim Malone, played by Sean Connery, is at the house, and he hears one of the bad guys coming in. So, one of the bad guys named Boaty, he hears one of these bad guys coming into the house, and this bad guy is holding a knife, but but then the character Jim Malone, played by Sean Connery, hears it. He turns around holding a shotgun, and he says, "Isn't that just like a wop?" brings a knife to a gunfight. Like, get out of here. Get out of here, you D-A-G, you doggo B-A-S-T-A-R-D. Like, that scene right there is, is a rather good quote by Sean Connery. And, of course, you know, he ends up being another victim of the mafia. So, because of this, you know, the main character of the movie, Elliot Ness, played by Kevin Costner, he finds out that his best friend, Elliot Ness, was the one... finds out that he was a victim of the mafia and stuff like that. So because of that, Elliot Ness, played by Kevin Costner, he plans to seek out revenge on the guy who did it. And the guy who was responsible for him was Frank Nitti, and I do like the scene later on in the movie where the main character of the movie, Elliot Ness, played by Kevin Costner, this is like much later on in the movie, but there's a really intense scene where Elliot Ness, played by Kevin Costner, he's inside of the building and he's helping a woman, you know, like there's a baby inside a stroller and like he's helping her get the baby up the stairs and like she appreciates his help and stuff like that, but however, Elliot Ness, played by Kevin Costner, knows that a bad guy who walked into the building is about to pull a gun on him, so he pulls out a gun first, making the mother scream, the mother with the baby scream, and, you know, of course, Elliot Ness, played by Kevin Costner, is able to, you know, strike one of the bad guys down, but there's more bad guys, and I gotta say, the whole scene where the main hero of the movie, Elliot Ness, is shooting at the bad guys, and the bad guys are shooting at him, and a baby is, you know, slowly falling down the stairs in a stroller in the middle of all this mess. Like, that right there is a very intense scene. But luckily, the baby is able to survive, and the main character, Elliot Ness, is able to get the baby safely back to his mother. But that scene alone is a really intense sequence. And then later on in the movie, you know, closer to the end of it, Elliot Ness, played by Kevin Costner, is chasing after the bad guy, Frank Nitti, the one who was responsible for, you know, for his best friend, Jim Malone, no longer being around. So he plans to get revenge on him, and the whole scene, and I like the whole part where, like, you know, he manages to defeat that bad guy, and he says, and you know, he basically pushes the bad guy, Jim Malone, off the building. He says, "Did he scream like that?" You know, basically referring to his partner. And then, you know, and then this bad guy, Frank Nitti, falls on top of a car, and then, you know, and then the car roof breaks like that. And then, you know, and then I like the part when he's inside with the people that are left alive, that of course being Agent George Storr, played by Andy Garcia, and, you know, with his one partner he has left, and, you know, and then the movie ends where the judge officially decides that Al Capone is guilty, and he goes away in prison. And then the movie ends on a good note where Elliot Ness, his family is safe, and justice has been served. So yeah, at the end of the day, for a person who had never seen this movie before until today, I absolutely loved this movie. I wish I would have seen it sooner, but, you know, hey, you know, it is impossible to see every movie out there. But yeah, I will definitely be adding this to my DVD collection at some point in the future. But yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give The Untouchables a perfect 10 out of 10. So yeah, anyways, guys, that was my review, and we'll catch you guys later. Bye-bye now.